What is going on, YouTube? We are going to be talking about the Chaves, the Chaves Redemption KickStop that just dropped not too long ago. I picked up a few of these. I actually picked up 3 of them. I've sold 1 and kept these 2. Just 3 was too many. I only ever intended on having 2. But I didn't know this one existed. When I found out this one existed, I had to have it. So I ended up with 3. That was 1 more than I wanted to have. So I sold my silver bullet. Pretty happy with that decision. But these are awesome. So overview. What are we looking at? So this is a collaboration between Ramon Chaves and Lee Williams. If you want to call it a collaboration, it's more like it's a Chaves knife that uses Lee Williams' kickstop mechanism. And then there's a couple minor tweaks to design that you'll see, namely the lack of the choil. Other than that, though, it's essentially a Ramon Chaves Redemption. So these are made in China, OEM'd by Riot. There's a lot of different flavors, a lot of different styles. You've got your plain stonewashed titanium like you normally see, and then you've got a bunch of dealer exclusives. Both of these are dealer exclusives. This one is through NC Blade. Really awesome people there. And this one is Steel Addiction Knives. And this one, spoiler alert, this is my favorite one. And honestly, I think it's the best, in my opinion, it's the best dealer exclusive that's out there. Your results may vary, or your mileage may vary. You may not love that. Comes in 2 different blade styles, the Tonto, both of these are Tonto, and then the drop point. The one I sold was the drop point. And it's funny because when I was first looking at these, I didn't like the Tonto. This is a Japanese style Tonto. I didn't love it. I wanted the drop point, and then I completely switched 180'd to really just loving this Tonto blade. It is so wicked. So I went with that. Let's do some quick specs, even though essentially this is your normal Redemption size 228. Little over 3.5 inch blade, just barely. Overall length is what, 8 1/4. Almost 8.5. You can see right there. So pretty big knife. Now we'll get some weights. I want to get weights on both. They're going to be vastly different because this one is full tie, and it is full tie with no lightning pockets or milling or anything. So it's going to be a chonker. 6.6. Actually, I thought it'd be closer to 7. That's a little bit surprising. And this one is going to be considerably lighter because of the carbon fiber. 5.7. So really like this one. It has such a good weight to it and such a good presence. And yeah, we'll do it right now. So here's not really old, but an older dealer exclusive Redemption with thumb studs, and it's got the choil. This one has a solid micarta front scale, as you can see, and it feels a little light to me. It feels a tad bit light to me, but what's cool about the kickstops here is because of the mechanism, they actually put a inset liner in here. I assume it's because of the mechanism needing that additional support. So that adds a little bit more weight than kind of these older non-titanium style ones. And for me, it gives it a perfect amount of heft without being a little overly heavy. This one's a little overly heavy. Still cool. It's full tie, but it has a little too much weight to it to be ideal. This one's frickin' perfect. So anyways, you may say, well, what's the big deal with the kickstop mechanism? Well, it's kind of unique from a normal flipper. A normal flipper, the flipper tab would be attached to the tang of the blade. And then when you flip it open, that flipper would come out this side and it would stick out right here, right? We've all seen kind of normal flipper knives. And if you notice, when this is open, that flipper is gone. So it gives you a very clean look. There's no flipper, there's no thumb stud, it's just gone. And I gotta say, I didn't like the lack of a choil at first, but now it's really grown on me. Same with the Tonto, because it kind of gives it this streamlined look, and it kind of separates it from the normal 228 look as well. But what's different, so you may say, I've seen this before, right? GTC Custom Maker, he did some collaboration with Zero Tolerance. He did a similar thing with a hidden flipper tab. The difference, though, is his flipper tab was always hidden, However, it was still attached to the tang. It would simply fold up. So you'd kind of pull it down, you'd flip it open, and then the spring would keep it down on this side, but it was still there. This one's cool because the flipper is not attached. So it's back here and it's running on its own pivot system with its own pin that goes right through it. But what's cool is it does actually engage with the tang. So you can see there's the tang picking it up, fits into a groove right there. And there it is in that groove. Now it's in the locked out position. It is static. When you press it, it presses against, sorry, trying to do this and keep it in camera, presses against that tang and kicks it off of the detent. Now it is loose and kind of free floating. This comes around, pushes it down, and locks it down in place. So that does mean you would never be able to remove this flipper tab completely. Like if you got this knife and you're like, you know what, I'm going to remove that for some odd reason, you wouldn't be able to, because this pin is what functions as the closed and opened blade stop. So it serves an additional function. It's not just hanging out there. This is what stops the blade. So when this makes contact, it's now stopped. And so this pin is actually running in a little channel. So the pin that goes through this kickstop piece is running in a little channel that's milled inside the liner and the titanium side, kind of like how you'd normally see a pin going in the tang and running in the channel. This is just attached to this kickstop piece right here. So it's actually a pretty reasonably complicated mechanism, and it's pretty ingenious the way it kind of works, right? Because it's not as simple. You know, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, it's just this piece hanging out of here and it just connects and flicks it open. It's more complex than that, and it serves more purpose, or it's more interconnected in the knife than I originally thought. Now, you may say, what's the point? Who cares? Like, why would you want to do that? Well, there's a couple reasons. One is it disappears. And when I first heard of this knife, I was like, like, who cares if it's gone when it's open? If anything, I want the tab to be gone when it's closed. You know, from a pure functional standpoint, I want it to be gone here so it's not in my pocket, not catching on things. When it's gone when it's open, yeah, it's a clean look, but who cares? But man, it really does look good. It really, really does look good, and it does look cool, and it gives it more of a presence than I thought it would. Because there's something subconscious about seeing this and not having thumb studs or like a flipper tab sticking out, because it almost looks like a fixed blade, right? Because it doesn't have those telltale folder kind of things other than the pivot. There's not the normal parts sticking out of it where you're like, oh, because like thumb studs, let's be honest, thumb studs never look good. They're always there because they have to be. You would never put them there from a design standpoint to make it look better, right? There's something we put up with, and you know, we try to make them look as nice as we can, give them a good shape, but they're always like not really supposed to be there. Same with the flipper tab, at least in the open position. It really shouldn't be there, but it has to be there because it is what it is. So that's one reason. And I think it pulls that off more than you would think. But the other reason is mechanical. And it gets pretty complicated here. I'm not going to dive into it super, super far. I haven't figured out all the details, but this allows you to get this flipper tab super, super high. Look how high that is. The top of the flipper tab is actually above the pivot. And if you know flippers, there's a lot of things that go into a flipper being good. One, you know, smoothness, running on bearings, blah, blah, blah. Two, strength of the detent. You want a strong detent that's crisp so that it breaks and flies open. But the other thing is leverage. The higher up from this pivot you go, the more leverage you have and the easier it is to flip it open. And this allows you to go super, super high, because in a normal knife, if you mounted it this high, the inverse would be super low right here. So if this just had a static flipper, the flipper would be all the way down here, and it would be like this awkward thing where your grip would be all the way down here, and it would just be kind of weird, and kind of a mess. Now, there are ways around it. You can do a high flipper tab, and I've got a knife that does it, but they have to do it in like funky ways. Like they have to really put the stop pin up super high. You have to like shave off the lock face. Like you have to do some funky stuff in order to get a traditional flipper high enough to achieve this, but then not have it do funky things when it's open. And it's tricky to do, and it limits kind of the design you can do. So the beauty of this thing is because it's not attached to that tang, you don't have that issue, and you're able to get a really high flipper, and you get extraordinary flipper action. It just feels so cool. It's so effortless, especially for such a big, heavy, thick blade. And of course it's got a great D10 and it's all dialed in, but it has just a little extra something. Now your average person probably wouldn't notice. They'd be like, whatever, it's just a flipper. But if you are a flipper connoisseur and have experienced a lot of them, I think you're going to notice something different about this knife. Now, I'm not saying it's, like I said, it's not impossible to achieve this in a regular flipper design. I'm just saying it's not as easy to do it without having weird stuff going on the flip side. No pun intended. It's going to affect your design capabilities. You may be limited in the types of things you can do, the types of blades, the type of lock face, or it's going to impact kind of your grip in the open position, because if it's high on this side, that means it's going to be low on this side. But this is a way around it because it doesn't follow that tang. The other kind of cool thing is it does give a little clicky, like it gives a cool kind of feeling. Like it kind of reminds me of like shooting a firearm, like an AK, how you can kind of feel the bolt carrier like move forward and slam back. Like you feel the mechanism in there. Like it's not obnoxious, but you feel that mechanical action, and it's kind of cool. This is a little bit like that because you feel these pieces kind of engage. They make a little tiny slight audible clicky noise, which is satisfying. Now, it is still buttery smooth. I will say, I think it does slightly impact like the drop shuttiness because it does have to engage with this, and there is another little pivot pin in there. And so I will say, I do think without that mechanism, it might be slightly more drop shutty than that. Like, let's see. Yeah, this one's a little more drop shutty. So there is a downside to having that additional piece in there, is that it doesn't drop shut quite as much, if that's something you really care about and you're into. Now, that being said, it still shakes shut, no problem. Let's try this one. This one's actually a little bit smoother. And I think it's just because the lock bar on this one's just a tad bit tighter. And so there's a little bit more friction on the D10 ball when it's closing, whereas this one's a little bit lighter. That can all be adjusted if you want to. You can remove that tension. This one kind of drops a little bit better, but I do suspect that. Now, it could be unrelated. Maybe there is no impact and it's just these particular knives, but I would suspect that mechanism does affect the drop shuttiness a little bit. Overall, it's a really cool mechanism. It has a lot of benefits. It looks really slick. And the other thing is, from what I hear, this is the only time this is going to appear on a Chaves knife. So this run right here, because I know a lot of people think this will just be the latest thing, and they'll do a bunch of street versions of this, and then it'll come back. From what I hear, that's not going to be the case. This is it. It's a one and done, one-time collaboration, and then they're going to be gone. So if you do want one of these, I guess I'm saying now is the time to get it. Maybe. But also don't take that with a grain of salt. That's just what I've heard online, some people saying it. I haven't heard an official statement from anybody. So could just be rumors. And you never know. Like whenever there's money to be made, people are going to make money. So I would suspect it's somewhere in the middle. Like, will we see the KICKSTOP again? Probably, but just probably not for a very long time would be my guess. But who knows? Who freaking knows? Okay, so that's it. Overview on the KICKSTOP. Basic review stuff, it's out there. You can go check out the 228. Most of that's going to carry over to this knife. I primarily wanted to talk about the KICKSTOP mechanism and also just show off my beauties here. So now I will talk about these. So NC Blade NC Blade exclusive, blue anodized titanium. Now, titanium does not anodize blue as well as like aluminum. Aluminum gets a real fire blue. Titanium doesn't quite do it. And then you can see how it looks a little grayer right there. It's not actually grayer, that's just oil. When you get oil on it, it kind of augments the color. So if I took some rubbing alcohol and cleaned this off, it would be bright blue again. But then the second my hands touch it, it would kind of dull up a little bit. That's just the nature of blue anodized titanium, as far as I understand it. But I think it still looks amazing. The blade is just your standard belt satin finish, just like you'd see in the regular production versions. The clip has a very light orange peel on it, which is really cool. Protects against scratches, and it looks awesome. And the same orange peel on the back spacer there. Really, really nice. This one has the gold camo fat carbon scale. My favorite thing on this knife is the bead blasted hardware. Looks really cool, and nobody else is really doing that, so that's awesome. Same with the blasted titanium side. So it's not stonewashed, it's blasted, and the clip, which is anodized gold, and the back spacer, which is anodized gold, and then it has the hand rubbed finish on the blade. Yeah. They also did a copper version just like this. The only downside is the clip is just normal blasted. They didn't anodize the clip copper. I think the back spacer's copper or it's gold. I don't know if you can anodize copper, but it seemed like it was copper, so I don't know. But it was definitely a color, but the clip didn't match, which was a bummer. But this one is just straight fire. It's one of my favorites. I really like this fat carbon camo. I think it looks amazing. It'll probably be dated at some point, but I like it. So guys, that's it. Kickstop Ramon Chaves KICKSTOP. I'll catch you guys later on the next video. See you guys. Leave comments, like, subscribe, all that stuff.